Hey everybody, Economic Ninja here. I hope you're doing great. Got an interesting metric for you to think about, to consider when we're talking about the slowing of the economy, the contracting of spending. It doesn't only affect the poor and middle class when we have contractions leading into recessions or the official recession number, but also the rich start to contract. I'm going to read this story from Zero Hedge, and then I'm going to talk about a story of something that happened to me on a racetrack at the racetrack the other day or a couple weeks back with some other YouTubers, all right? And something that was very interesting that they told me. All right, here we go. It's out of the Zero Hedge. It says, could falling private jet demand be another sign rich pull back on spending ahead of economic turbulence? Says a slump in the use of private jets in the US could suggest that the wealthy individuals are reducing their spending in response to the rising threat of recession in the next 12 months. Bloomberg data shows private jet flights across the US peaked in early 2022 and have been sliding ever since. Takeoffs and landings fell 4.5% in the first quarter compared with the same quarter last year. The drop accelerated to 9.3% in April compared with an 8.6% decline in March, possibly a sign of that demand is crushing. Let me stop there and say I know a handful of friends that are very successful entrepreneurs, and even though they didn't fly private before, during the pandemic, they immediately went to private. Why? Because they weren't throwing on masks and they wanted their freedom, right? And they wanted to get in and out and not deal with all the craziness that was going on with all of the sanitary requirements and everything that happened in the airports. These were people at much higher income levels, right? They weren't billionaires, but they were definitely multimillionaires. And they didn't fly private before. They'd usually fly first class prior in commercial flights, but that nudged them over the edge to go private. So we did see private jet movement pick up a lot since the pandemic, all right? And now it is starting to wane. So you need to consider that. So there's a couple different groups of people that fly private. People that are ultimately wealthy and own their own jets, but also people that make a lot of money that didn't necessarily do it before, but do it out of convenience. And they are people that make good money, but they're also really susceptible to turns in the market, okay? Still getting that YouTuber story. It's pretty interesting. But I wanted you to consider that, okay? So there's two different groups. The people that own their own jets and that do that all the time and have the money to burn, and the people that do it out of necessity or something like the pandemic that pushed them over the edge to go that way, okay? So it says here, with the industry under pressure and capital markets in a volatile state, FlexJet, the second largest U.S. operator of private jets behind NetJets, was forced to shelve its SPAC last month. Even though private jet demand is still above 2019 levels, and again, think about that, 2019, it's above 2019. So it was literally because of the pandemic that really forced a lot of people into private jet flying, okay? So we need to consider these numbers as they come out in the news. Another big metric is going to be the sales of these jets. Some industry insiders welcome the end of the private jet boom that took off during COVID. Ken Ritchie, chairman of FlexJet, told Bloomberg, "Thank heavens, it's not what it was last year." He said his company saw annual flight hours jump to 145,000 from 90,000 before the pandemic. Think about this. Have you ever heard of a chairman of a jet company go, "Oh my gosh, I'm so glad we're not slammed to business anymore"? Think about that. That is literally probably somebody that's trying to cover their tail and praying that people do not sell their stock. Just think about that. What CEO in their right mind would be going, "Thank heavens it's not busy anymore. So sick and tired of all that business that was coming in." Boy, you should fire that chairman just for saying that, honestly. Think about that. It's a big deal. Sliding private jet demand comes as recent debt and credit card data published by the Bank of America Institute shows wealthy folks are pulling back on spending. So let me, hold on, there's a little bit more. Besides waning demand, a recent JP Morgan Chase report showed average asking price for private jets also fell 1.2% in March from February to 12.8 million. There's some easing of prices after the boom over the last few years. Still, the average asking price was 7% above prices from last year due to tight inventory. Now, when there's two types of purchasers of private jets. There are owners and there are operators, right? Very simple. It's important to see the difference between the two in their spending habits, because if one wanes, the operator companies, the companies like NetJets, right? If they stop buying jets or slow their purchases of jets, it means they don't need so many jets because they're not selling so many tickets, right? Thank heaven, says the CEO. Point being is that that's one metric, and that shows you one type of person that flies private, okay? They make X amount, right? They make a lot more than all of us, but they make this much, right? Then there are the owners, the ones that make this much, and their companies have the money to go and buy these things cash, and they just go for it, or possibly they finance it. Point being is that this is a totally different demographic now. If those keep selling, you know that there's still a demand by ultra wealthy individuals around the country or around the world that are buying these jets. Now, if both of these metrics slow, now you see you've got an issue, okay? Almost getting to that story. A combination of wealthy folks reducing private jet flights and pulling back on spending comes as Bloomberg data shows recession probabilities for the next 12 months have reached 100%. Don't you love those metrics? Well, we're for sure in a recession. No, we're there now. Just stop cooking the books and tell us the truth. Thank you, President, El Presidente. So let me talk about this story. I'm out at the racetrack a few weeks ago at Buttonwillow and run into the guys from Daily Driven Exotics. It's a channel on YouTube, huge following, like millions of people follow it. And all these guys do is drive Lamborghinis. It's pretty crazy. It's all they do. And that day, they're at the racetrack, and I chatted with them, and a couple of people recognized me out of their group. And we were talking about economics and the economics of Lambo sales and stuff, because they're starting to fall. In their words, they said softening, right? And they didn't really have a grasp on the market. It's just they're going full-fledged. Very successful guys, putting out some cool content about Lamborghinis and exotic cars. You guys know I like cars. I'm a car guy. But one of the gentlemen that recognized me really started talking about cycles. And we started chatting about it. And he owns a race car company that builds race cars down in Huntington Beach. And he told me, he said, you know what was interesting about 2008? Because I was asking him questions like, how long have you been in business? What was it like during the Great Recession for your business? Tell me all the ins and outs. He said, well, it was really interesting. He said, my clients, I had two types of clients. Clients that had tons of money, and then clients that wanted to have tons of money. And they would all pay me to build them race cars. They would bring in a car, we would soup it up, just build it up, make it awesome. He said, when 2008 happened, it was like overnight, cars were shelved. These cars that guys had put hundreds of thousands of dollars into were immediately, came down to the shop and said, sorry, I don't have the money to pay you anymore. I'm grabbing my car as is, towing it to my garage, and it sits in the garage. The other type of person, the ultra wealthy people, they stopped spending as well. And he would ask, like, well, what's going on? Just curious, why aren't you finishing this? He said, look, there's a big difference between having money, which I've got lots of money. And he said, lots of clients said, we got money, but there's a difference between having a lot of money and the money that stopped flowing in, stopped coming in the door. And rather than continue spending, they're smart individuals. They saw money stop coming out the door. They had lots of money. They went, whoop, hold on. We're not doing anything. We're not doing anything. We're waiting. We're waiting for those cash flow lines to open back up again before we do anything. They were protecting their wealth. And that's the rare thing. That's the opposite mentality of most people, because most people, they just keep doing every day. They're heading the grindstone. They're just spending money, and the money's leaving, and they're just spending money. They don't even pop their head up to look around and go, wait a minute, all my coworkers are being laid off around me. Maybe I should stop spending. I see it all the time, actually. Right now, I have people that call me. They're like, dude, my coworker's being laid off. I'm like, well, what are you doing to change? I'm like, well, what should I do? What can I do? Like, stop spending. Live like you're poor right now, because you could be the next person. You have to immediately protect everything that you do have. Whatever you have, even if it's a little, protect it. Be like a squirrel with those, nuts that they want to store for winter, and they're storing them away. Like, nobody's coming to get these nuts. Think about that. Totally different mentality. And so that is what I believe you're going to start seeing ultra wealthy people do too, is they're going to contract their spending, unless they're just trying to buy views, buy attention, buy fame, or notoriety, and they're just going to continue spending. And those kind of people usually run headlong into a mountain, and just auger in anyway. But I wanted to bring you that metric because it's a totally different way of thinking. Private jet sales and private jet usage is on the decline. And I believe you're going to see it by fall fall below where we were at in 2019. And then that brings us back to reality. Because remember, 2019, the end of 2019 is when everything started and it was getting bad, really, really bad. And so think about that metric. All right. All right, guys, you guys have a great day. The Economic Ninja is out.